Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a story where massive digital ambition just collides head-on with a catastrophic security failure.
And this isn't just, a website going down.
No, not at all. This is about the vulnerability of an entire country's public identity system for a whole generation of its citizens. We're going deep into the fallout from the October 2025 cybersecurity incident that hit Uruguay's national educational platform, Plataforma GURI.
And to really get the gravity here, you have to understand what URI actually is. It stands for Gestión Unificada de Registros e Información.
Right.
But it's so much more than a grade book. It's really the central nervous system for the entire primary education system in Uruguay.
So when it goes down,
The whole system is paralyzed. And critically, it holds sensitive records for about 3 million people. We're talking students, their families, and the 24,000 educators in the schools.
that is a staggering amount of data, especially for minors, all under one digital roof. So our mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we need to evaluate the incredible risk from this alleged data compromise. The long-term threat to these kids is huge.
It is. And the second part.
The second part is this complex legal paradox that, allowed the state to collect all this data without explicit consent in the first place,
Right.
and why their response was just profound silence.
Silence instead of transparency.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the incident itself, the operational breakdown.
Right. So on October 3rd, 2025, ANEP, the National Education Authority, detects what they call a cybersecurity incident. What happened right then?
Well, the response was
Mm-hmm.
absolute. They just pulled GRI completely offline.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And when you take a piece of critical national infrastructure offline like that,
Yeah.
you're basically signaling that the system's integrity it's gone. It's fundamentally compromised.
And the consequences of that shutdown must have been immediate.
Oh, absolutely. GRI's whole purpose is efficiency,
Right.
right? To get 24,000 teachers off of manual paperwork.
And for 5 days.
For at least 5 days, that was totally reversed. Teachers were back to paper and pen for everything. Attendance, grades, logging parent communications.
Just a logistical nightmare across thousands of schools.
It created a huge administrative backlog, and it really showed just how dependent the entire country had become on this one single point of failure.
And even after those 5 days, things didn't just snap back to normal. The sources mention this staggered recovery.
That's right. The public app, GURI Familia, came back online partially around October 8th. But the core administrative part for teachers, that was delayed much, much longer.
And that delay is a huge clue, isn't it?
It tells us everything. The administrative back end, the part with all the high privilege access, that was clearly the primary target.
Or at least where the most damage was done.
Exactly. Restoring that part safely takes a lot of deep forensic work. You have to be sure you've closed the door they came in through and that they didn't leave any back doors.
So the long downtime for the admin side pretty much confirms that administrative credentials were stolen.
It strongly suggests it,
Yeah.
that the privileged part of the network was compromised.
Which brings us to the communication, or lack thereof. While all this is happening, ANEP is just sticking to this vague, legalistic term, cybersecurity incident.
They deliberately avoided words like hack or data breach.
Why?
It's all about perception management and, frankly, deferring legal accountability. Their entire public message was about service restoration, about getting the system back up.
An operational metric.
Right. Meanwhile, external media and security analysts were already reporting what it was. A hackio, a hack with claims of massive data theft.
So ANEP's priority was getting the platform running again.
Not telling citizens that their data, their children's data, had just been stolen. That distinction is key to this whole crisis.
So while ANEP was staying quiet, the threat actors, they were not.
Not at all. A group called Tacuara claimed responsibility, and they were very specific about what they said they took.
And the numbers are
Yep.
pretty terrifying. 15 gigabytes of data.
15 gigabytes. Containing, they claimed, nearly 3 million PII records. Personally identifiable information.
What kind of PII are we talking about?
The full kit for identity fraud. Identity document numbers, full names, home addresses, dates of birth, contact details, everything you need.
But there was something else, something that makes this data uniquely dangerous.
Yes. This is the part that really elevates the risk, the inclusion of familial links.
So they didn't just get a list of names.
No. They got the map connecting students to their parents and guardians, the whole family network.
And when you combine official ID numbers with verified family relationships, what does that let a threat actor do?
It's a game changer. You move beyond basic phishing into incredibly convincing, sophisticated spear phishing.
Give me an example.
Well, they can craft a message to a parent using the student's real name, the parent's name, the teacher's name, all verified data. It would look completely legitimate.
A fake emergency message asking for financial details or something?
Exactly. And for the minors, the damage is, it's a slow burn disaster. Their identity numbers are clean now, but in 10 years when they go to apply for college or a job, they could find their identity has been completely wrecked.
A long-term liability for an entire generation. And it's so important to stress, this wasn't an isolated attack. GURI wasn't the only target.
No, not at all. This was happening at the same time as the Crypto24 ransomware attack on the National Mortgage Bank, BHU.
And that one involved 700 gigabytes of financial data.
Right, and there were also leaks from the Ceibal educational program. When you see this kind of coordinated targeting of financial and educational systems,
it signals a systemic problem.
it signals that sophisticated groups see Uruguay's public data infrastructure as a single, high-value, and frankly, very vulnerable target.
Let's pivot now to the legal side of this, because this is where it gets really interesting. A lot of people feel uneasy that ANEP collected all this data on kids using an opt-out system. Parents never gave explicit consent.
And that's a totally valid feeling under normal data laws. But Uruguay's system has this powerful exception baked into it.
Which is?
It's in their data protection law, Ley 18.331, Article 16 specifically. It exempts ANEP from needing express consent because they're processing the data as part of their cometido público, public duty.
So because their job is formal education, the state basically gave them a pass on consent to do that job effectively.
Precisely. It's a pragmatic choice to run a national system. And that same legal justification also covers the other controversial part, the data sharing with the Ministry of Public Health.
People were saying ANEP was selling the data.
Which is a mischaracterization. It wasn't a sale. It was an intergovernmental data transfer, an articulation, they called it.
To do what?
To regularize the mandatory carnet de salud, the health card for children. They used GRI's records to find students whose health checks had expired.
And it worked. The sources say it produced real public benefits.
It really did. Between May and August of 2025, they got about 67,000 kids' health cards up to date, a 60% success rate. That public good is the state's whole argument for this ambitious data collection.
Okay, so the cometido público seems like a strong justification. But it wasn't a blank check, was it?
No. And this is the core of the legal paradox, that authority to bypass consent is conditional.
On what?
The law says ANEP must observe the principle of security, that's Article 10, in a special manner.
In a special manner, what does that mean?
It means their right to your data is entirely dependent on their ability to keep it exceptionally secure.
So the deal is, we give up consent, and in return, the state guarantees top-tier protection.
That's the trade-off. And if they fail in security, the whole legal basis for collecting the data gets shaky.
So let's look at what happened in October 2025. The shutdown, the chaos, the confirmed hack, the stolen data. How does that measure up against the duty to provide security in a special manner?
It's a direct, documented operational failure of that principle, period.
And that failure compromises the very legality of their data collection.
It does. It directly undermines their entire framework under the cometido público exception. They broke the precondition.
Which explains the profound silence.
It explains everything. If ANEP officially admits to a data breach because of a security failure, they're not just admitting to one mistake.
They're
effectively admitting that their entire historical process of data collection might have been unlawful from the moment their security wasn't up to snuff.
Wow. So the risk isn't just a fine for one incident, it's potentially invalidating the legal framework for their entire data architecture.
Exactly. The silence isn't just bureaucracy, it's a legal shield. It's an institutional survival strategy that puts deferring legal liability ahead of notifying 3 million people their data's out there.
It's clear the state's ambition for data integration it completely outpaced the security infrastructure.
Vastly outpaced it.
So let's talk about the technical root causes. Analysts say the ANEP attack and the BHU bank attack had something in common.
They did. The evidence strongly suggests the initial way in for both was compromised administrative user credentials.
A classic TTP, a classic technique.
It's textbook. You go after the weakest link, which is almost always a human with privileged access.
So if credentials were the way in, what basic security measures were just missing?
2 glaring systemic failures. First, an almost total lack of mandatory multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
MFA, that's the single most effective defense against this kind of attack, isn't it?
It is. It's low cost and high impact. The second failure was just as bad. Poor network segmentation.
Explain what that means.
It means once the attacker got in, say, with a teacher's stolen password, there were no internal walls, nothing to stop them from moving around.
So they could just wander from that one account to the crown jewels?
They could pivot laterally across the network until they reached the database holding all 3 million records. They had the run of the house.
So what are the immediate non-negotiable fixes ANEP needs to make?
First, architecture. They have to urgently segment that network. The really sensitive stuff, the ID numbers, the family links, needs to be encrypted and isolated in its own vault, completely separate from the day-to-day operational databases.
The goal being to limit the blast radius of a future breach.
Exactly. And second, the human element.
Yeah.
For all 24,000 educators and IT admins,
The mandatory MFA.
mandatory MFA, immediately. It cannot be optional anymore. If credentials are the door, MFA is the deadbolt.
This really sounds less like a technical problem and more like a failure of governance.
That's the conclusion. Uruguay has these great strategic documents about cyber resilience, but the reality is a huge gap in resource allocation reports of no cybersecurity budget at ANEP and no centralized authority.
So agencies like CERTV don't have the teeth to enforce these basic standards.
And we are seeing the direct consequence of that strategic gap.
So this deep dive paints a really stark picture. You have this data system built on an ambitious idea of public good.
Using the Comitato Público to link health and education data.
And it was all catastrophically undermined by these basic foundational security failures. The result is just a massive erosion of public trust.
And there's an urgent need to notify citizens. I mean, the long-term identity theft risk for these kids is real, and it lasts for decades. The institutional silence protects the institution, but it hurts the very people they're supposed to be protecting.
And this is where the story gets even more complicated looking forward. The state isn't stopping this data integration.
No, they're doubling down.
Yeah.
By 2026, they want a real-time monitoring system that further consolidates a child's educational and health data into a single lifelong state profile.
Which raises this unavoidable and, frankly, pretty scary question about the future of Comitato Público. If today that legal exception justifies sharing health and education data for a social good, how easily could that definition be stretched tomorrow?
Could public duty be extended to justify more intrusive things? Social scoring, state profiling?
Especially when the state has already proven it can't handle the basic security for the data it already holds. That's the critical risk hanging over the 3 million citizens whose data they failed to protect. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.